Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. This is game 3 of our March Smashness 2020 The Gauntlet Tournament with Mythic Horse Sheep number 8 versus Robot Vampires number 25. This is an extremely even match in the polling at 50% each. In fact, Mythic Horse Sheep had 50.1, so you're talking about a fraction of a percentage difference between the two teams in who people thought was going to win, and I think that's really accurate. And it's one of the reasons why it went to Game 3. And Game 3 was a nail-biter. I was happy to be a part of that one. I had Mythic Horse Sheep winning, and they did in Game 3, but it was really close, and it almost got stolen at the last second. I want to talk about these two teams because in some respects, they're really similar. They're both swarm factions with extra minion plays, but they go about it in a different way. And the way that they swarm with the payoff is different. The sheep will swarm via movement at the end, whereas the robots will swarm with chaining their extra plays and then finishing with Microbot Alpha for that big finish. Obviously, robots and ponies together make a very powerful combination, but they were separate and facing off against each other. The robots had a Titan from the vampires, the Ancient Lord, whereas Mythic Horse Sheep had no counter for that. But the Ancient Lord doesn't really add power anyway. He's just there for his ability. Now, one of the interesting things about robot vampires is that they could be incredibly swingy. They've had multiple exhibition games with drastically different results, and sometimes people are really frustrated by them because they feel like they aren't playing in action. Tech Center of the robots may not be drawn. The vampire actions can be really bad or situationally very good. If you can get Crack of Dusk with Microbot Alpha, that's very good. If you can get Mad Monster Party with the Vampire Titan out, that could be a large amount of power at a critical moment. But if you get Buffet, or if you get Crack of Dusk and you have no good targets, Dinner Date is kind of underwhelming, particularly with the fact that the sheep have a bunch of minions who are above Power 2, which makes it harder to target. Even just getting out the Vampire Titan can be a challenge based on the actual cards that you draw, which makes this really frustrating. They still have some good plays, but it wouldn't surprise me if they got held back. Now, in Game 1, my understanding is that they came out firing. And that's not a surprise because when they hit their upside is really good. What makes it hard for Sheep is the fact that they have Hello Dolly, a very powerful action that can copy any other action, but you're playing that against a team that doesn't really play many actions. You don't know if you should be saving it because you may save it for a moment that never happens. Just simply because there aren't that many good candidates. In my game, one of the action that I chose to copy with To Follow or Not was actually Summon Wolves of all things. Simply because I had no other options. It was the only action in the deck, I believe. And it ended up working out in my favor because it let me just build that up over time without directly adding power, and then I can move a minion on in order to finish the base off. You have a number of ways that one team can counter another. Big Gulp can actually be pretty powerful destruction, and that can take out Rainbow, which is a card draw engine. It can take out a Ram, which will make life difficult for robot vampires. Even a Black Sheep, as a higher power minion for its class, because there's 3 copies, it should be 3, but it's actually 4. Big Gulp can do a pretty decent amount of damage. And against the robots, if you copy that, it's not that big because you probably wouldn't take out the Alpha in that case. You couldn't take out a Warbot. Most of the other minions, maybe a Fixer is the best one. But again, you don't know exactly if you're going to even draw a Hello Dolly or if Big Gulp is ever going to get played because you don't know what to use Hello Dolly for. The Ram could make things really interesting for vampires by removing their minions constantly, especially since they want to try and get 2 bases at once. Mythic Horse Sheep have the Teaching Power combo that didn't seem to be successful. I don't think the situation ever really presented itself. There were a lot of solo bases between both sides because that's what they can do. You have the mass movement of the horses with adventure power, which could easily make a solo base. Robots are definitely a solo base factory themselves. There's actually 2 solo bases at the same time. I had just broke Evan City Cemetery in game 3, and Sonus countered with breaking, I think it was Egg Chamber and Moot Site, if memory serves me correctly. So I got 5 points, he got 3, but then he counters with 5 unanswered points, and all of a sudden the game is really close. And we're racing to the finish line. I ended up being able to make sure that all my minions were out of Big Gulp range using encouragement power, and that ended up being the difference, because I don't always do this, but in a situation like that, I will typically dump as much power as I can, knowing that I will break the base next turn. Because even if I couldn't, even if he tried to overtake me, I had teaching power in my back pocket, which I thought would get another powerful minion to finish it off. But he was able to almost solo Ninja Dojo, which would have ended the game abruptly, because then he'd have, enough points to win, and I wasn't on there. But he fell short. You have to be afraid of robot vampires, because they still have Cull the Weak, as strange as it sounds. Because of the excess minions, they could drop a lot of power. I thought, do I put a ram on that base to try and slow him down? Or do I use the ram to try and maintain my lead on Laboratorium? Because what if he does overtake me? Instead of targeting Ninja Dojo, if the ram's not on Laboratorium and I put on Ninja Dojo, he might be able to overtake me there, especially since he gets a power counter for playing there. And I have teaching power, but now I'm down 4 power, which also factors into encouragement power and Starlight, and it also means that I'm down 1 less card revealed for teaching power. So really tough decision, and I ended up just maximizing my power, leaving Ninja Dojo to see if he can solo it. There's nothing he can do about it. If he could drop 18 and break that out of nowhere, he may be able to solo. He may be able to take me on Laboratorium. So you just tip your hat off if that were to happen. But going back to game 2, you could really feel the tension, because that game was extremely close, 15-14. And just like this game was close, these 2 teams were really evenly matched. And the fact that it's 50-50, there's no wrong answer here. It truly is. The circumstances of the game are going to define what happens. Anything can happen. I wouldn't have felt bad if Robot Vampires advanced. It actually would have been kind of fitting, because they would have gotten back. They got hit a lot in the seeds, just simply because their upside wasn't being felt by the other committee members. And that's why I knocked them down several times. But when it's truly 50-50, and when I myself am thinking, yeah, this is hard, it can go either way, there's no wrong answer. So congrats to Mythic Horses. You're in the next round with Sheep. And we'll see what happens tomorrow for Superhero Princesses versus Ancient Egyptian Luchadors. Thanks so much for watching today. I'll see you tomorrow. Let's shut it down.